Setbacks are temporary, but comebacks, they are legendary. Welcome back to the PSI Effect, where we pause, shift, and ignite purpose that speaks louder than your past. This is Neug, and together with Franky, we're your hosts in this space, and your comeback starts now. Okay, you're back with us here at the PSI Effect Podcast. Today's Veterans Day special celebrates service, legacy, and the women who embody both. We are honored to be joined by a mother-daughter duo, both Air Force veterans, whose journeys redefine strength, purpose, and grace. But before we introduce you to our guest today, Franky, talk to me, man. How's it been this week?
It's been another whirlwind of a week. It's hard to believe that we're already here celebrating Veterans Day. Looking back, like, where has the year gone? Time is just getting away from us so quickly. But, you know, it is so important to take time to reflect and to thank our veterans for just what they do for us, the things that they sacrifice, the things they endure, all for this country and for all the people that live here. So I just want to say thank you to all of our veterans as we celebrate them on this holiday. And I'm really looking forward to our conversation today to celebrate two very special veterans in our space.
Absolutely. I'm excited too, man. I've been looking forward to this for a while. And I want to just reiterate what you said to thank all of the veterans. Being a veteran myself, you know, I know what it's like to serve, and I know the sacrifice that all the veterans are making. So shout out to all the veterans everywhere. Okay. So as I mentioned, we have a mother-daughter duo, both who were in the United States Air Force. We have Alexis Sellers, who's a former staff sergeant in the Air Force. And we have Bettina J. Sellers, Master Sergeant retired. Welcome, ladies, both of you, to the PSI Effect Podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Absolutely. Been looking forward to it.
Awesome. So why don't we start with you, Alexis? Why don't you just give us a high-level overview of who you are, your service, and what you did, and what you're doing now.
Hello, everyone. As Neug stated, yes, I am Alexis. I am a former staff sergeant in the Air Force. I actually served 2 separate tours in the Air Force. My first 4 years were active duty, and the next 9.5 years, but I like to round it to 10 because anything over 5, you round up, or 0.5, you round up. I was served in the reserves. And so now I have separated over 10 years ago, about 12 years now. And I am a DoD civilian working as an accountant for the Air Force Reserve Command down in Warner Robins, Georgia.
Awesome. Okay. Retired Master Sergeant, enlighten us.
Okay. Well, retired Master Sergeant. My name is, once again, Bettina. I retired after 20 years and 12 days. The 12 days matter. Do not cut that out. 20 years and 12 days. I did multiple jobs in the Air Force. I went in the Air Force initially as security forces. I was one of the first 100 women back in 1985 that they allowed to go into security. They had women doing law enforcement, working as gate guards and managing the gates and patrolling the base. However, I was one of the people that went out to the flight line, and we took care of the security for the all of the aircrafts. And where I was stationed in Montana, with that, I went into personnel. I was also a special duty dormitory manager. I was an Air Force recruiter, and I was a superintendent of military personnel. So I was not a one-trick pony.
Man,
fantastic.
Yeah, it seems like you guys both covered the gambit of responsibility and roles and all the different aspects of your service.
And what keeps you busy today, Bettina?
So after I retired, I took advantage of the Air Force. They called it the post 9/11 bill that allowed us to go back to school, and they paid for us to go back to school. I finished my undergraduate degree that I started at Grambling State University. I finished my undergraduate degree at St. Leo, and was in criminal justice. And then I went on to get a master's in clinical mental health counseling, and I have a private practice, and I specialize in trauma-informed care. So I specialize in trauma.
So let's start by going back to the beginning and the moment the journey into service began for you guys, right? So Alexis, what first drew, or I should ask both of you, what first drew each of you to the Air Force? I mean, there's several services that you could have chosen. What drew you to the Air Force?
Am I going first?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, fun fact, my mother was a recruiter, and there was no way I was
No,
going.
she didn't.
Yep.
No, she didn't.
Legacy.
There was no way I would be going to any of those other branches. And if by chance I couldn't get into the Air Force, then the Navy was the alternate choice. However, my main reason to join was I had no intentions of ever going to college. And we had come to that point in life where it was time to move out of mom's home. So those are the choices I had outside of the negative choices that, the path that I could have gone down. But it was an ultimately great choice for me. It really worked out in my favor.
Fantastic.
Let me just say, she thought when she graduated from high school that she asked me about community college. She said, well, what about Nova? I said, Nova? The community college where they don't have dorms? I said, that's the 13th grade. You're not going there. You need to find somewhere that has a dorm, some housing, or something. Okay? But the 13th grade is not it. Sorry. We are not getting ready to be roommates. So she was not wrong when she said it was about that time. And however, she did make the choice to enlist in the Air Force on her own. I just told her, this is not the squatting spot. So anyway.
Fun fact, I actually signed up at 16. She gave parental consent. I didn't leave for basic training until I was 18, but I signed up at 16.
Which meant I was ready. Yes, sign those documents right early. But my mother signed mine at when I was 17, 16 too, actually, because I enlisted in the delayed enlistment program, what they call the delayed enlistment program, when I was 17. And I went in the Air Force. I chose the Air Force, number one, because blue is my favorite color. I did not look very good in green. I was in Air Force. I was in Army ROTC. Hey, color matters. I was in Army ROTC when I was in high school. I did 4 years of Army ROTC. And the colonel that was the commander, Colonel Rutledge, he was a very funny guy, but he just said, nope, you're going in the Army. And when we did what they called recon and had to go out to Newport News Park in Newport News, Virginia, and low crawl through the weeds, I said, oh, yeah, no, this is not what I'm going to do. I don't hear the Air Force does this kind of thing. So we won't be going into the Army. Thank you, but no thank you. The color is wrong, and the ground pounding is a little wrong for me. So, which is really funny because going in the Air Force and being a security police, I still ended up out in the field, not the field the same way the Army does the field. I still ended up doing what we called air-based ground defense. And I was the only female in a training site. I was the only female. I was in a hut by myself because the huts held 8 people. They had bunk beds. And so I was in a hut by myself because there were no other females. So there was nobody else for me to room with. And so I went to air-based ground defense after security police training. And then I was stationed at my first base was Malmstrom Air Force Base in Great Falls, Montana. And that was a bit of a culture shock for multiple reasons.
Well, that's a good segue into my next question. It's no secret that the armed services are, have been dominated by men, right? And so how did serving in a male-dominated environment shape your confidence and resilience or your perspective on leadership?
Well, by the time I joined the Air Force, it was very diverse with males versus females. I didn't experience the male dominance. My office probably actually had more females than males. I had an admin job. I worked finance. And so I don't think too many males, wanted to do the admin work, but, it's the Air Force needs. And it just so happened that my career field was predominantly female.
So Alexis enlisted in 2004. I enlisted in 1985. So she enlisted nearly 20 years after me. And although there have always been admin jobs and personnel jobs in the Air Force and in all of the branches, because somebody has to take care of the paperwork and finance and things of that nature, I chose a job and I didn't choose it because it was predominantly male. I chose it because I was interested in being a security police. At one point, I thought I wanted to be a state trooper in Virginia. I wanted to go back home when I left the Air Force and be a state trooper in Virginia. And I thought that would be a great path to do that. And so going in and it didn't hurt that I was already kind of a tomboy anyway. I was, rolling around in the dirt playing football with the boys. I was the only female on the baseball league when I was small, when I was probably about 11 or 12 years old. So none of that stuff was being around a lot of men it wasn't something I was unfamiliar with. And however, the attitudes and the demeanor of the men that I was around, being an Air Force, a female in the Air Force, a woman in the Air Force, it was a different brand. Because the males I had been around growing up, they were all from the neighborhood. So even though they were different races, creeds, colors, and backgrounds, they were all from the same neighborhood. So we were familiar. As an active duty woman in the Air Force, you got people from every walk of life, from different places, south, north, east, west, different countries, different cultures. And even with the men right here in the United States, they weren't always used to looking up and seeing a woman doing as much or doing as well, if not better than they were doing in a field that required you to run fast, to be able to fire a weapon, multiple different weapons, to be able to work an obstacle course, run and complete an obstacle course, a very difficult obstacle course. So dig a foxhole and stay overnight in the foxhole. They weren't used to being around women that could do that and could do it with pride. And I wasn't a damsel in distress. I wasn't, please help me. When we had to do a fireman's carry or we had to do a buddy carry, I had to squat over, and I was only 112, 15 pounds. I had to squat over and grab my buddy and throw him over my back and run and drop him too, because you're relying on me to save your life. So I had to be able to do that stuff. And I was quite capable of doing it. I was very good at what I did. And I'm not tooting my own horn, yet I'm tooting my own horn because I was very good at what I did. So I think I earned the respect. I'm sure there were some people that still didn't like it. I just earned the respect of my supervisors, my commanders, and the people around me, because they knew I wasn't there just to smile and be pretty. Although I was pretty and I was smiling, let's just say that. Anyway, but they knew that I was there to do the work and to cover their back and to complete the mission.
Bettina, along those lines, what would you say to young women today who may find themselves in those places that are, considered quote unquote male dominated, or where they may feel like they're being discriminated against simply because they're a woman?
So first of all, if we're talking in the broad sense of women anywhere, everywhere, doing any kind of job, I say hold your head up and just give 100% and then add a little more to that, because your work is going to have to speak for you. And even when your work speaks for you, there are going to be people who are not going to believe. There are going to be men that come from backgrounds, and women as well, who don't think that certain women should be in certain career fields doing certain things. The Air Force that we're looking at today, I wouldn't push anybody in it. I'll be honest. I wouldn't. The Air Force that we're looking at today, it doesn't allow the autonomy that we had. Of course, there's following orders, and you have to do certain things. You have to abide by the rules. You have to abide by the regulations. They used to call them regulations. They call them Air Force instructions now. But you have to abide by those things. However, it is becoming now, in this particular era, it is becoming where women are being thrown out of certain jobs and certain career fields because it is thought, even though we've been doing them for 30, 40, 50 years in the Air Force, this particular people that are leading the force, I'm being very, very, very diplomatic, all right? So the people that are leading the force, they don't believe that we should or could. Never mind that we have been and do. They don't believe that. So I wouldn't, whereas before as a recruiter, I was constantly encouraging people to enlist and to serve the country and to be a part of the solution and not a part of the problem. Um, I just don't stand behind that as I did before. I'm not saying I never will again. Hopefully there will come a time where I can say, yeah, I feel like you should serve, because as a recruiter, I actually felt like every person that turned 18 and was able-bodied and capable should enlist in one or another branch of the service, at least for just one enlistment, for multiple reasons. To understand that we're not here for ourselves. We're here for the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is, a lot of times people will say, thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. And I've learned, and I appreciate that. I appreciate it. I appreciate the respect that seems to be shown. I always say thank you for your sacrifice, because it is a sacrifice. One of the things I would explain to people with recruiting is the Air Force is the military as a whole is the only job / career that you can walk into at 18 years old with no college degree, and they will train you on $1 million equipment, whether it's an airplane, whether it's a missile that you're working with, million and $1 billion equipment. No high school diploma. They take you right out of high school. I mean, no college degree. They take you right out of high school. And sometimes you can get in with a GED, right out of high school. And they train you on this equipment that if you walked into Boeing at 18 and said, I would like to work on your aircraft, they would laugh. You're not working on this aircraft. So when people get out of the Air Force, the armed forces, period, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine, Coast Guard, now Space Force, when they get out, they may not have a degree. You know, we don't all go to school while we're enlisted, or as an officer, the officers have already gone to school or they go to college. However, we don't all go to school. So I could go to a job that somebody with a degree, I would get that job probably before them, because they know that I have hands-on experience. I've actually put my hands on that aircraft, or I've actually fired that M16. I was an M60 gunner. I carried an M60. That is not an easy job, because an M60 gunner actually has an assistant gunner that carries the ammo. Right? It's a big old ammo can. That's one of those old ammo cans that you pop that metal thing open. A lot of times people use them as shoe shine boxes. You know, later on they pop them open, put shoe shine stuff in it. So I had a gunner. I had an M60 gunner, and I was running around at 115 pounds with that M60 strapped across my back, running and landing and planting myself and firing the weapons. It's important to understand that the armed forces, all of them, I believe, is the only job that is going to let someone with a high school diploma or a GED walk into that corporation, so to speak, and work on $1 million equipment with no education or training. And they're going to train you. They're going to take the Air Force in and of itself. They take people, and each branch does it. We have linguists. They take children 18 years old and they train them on different, you have to, when you take the ASVAB test, it lets them know whether or not you have the aptitude to learn languages. So part of it is they can tell whether you can learn languages. And you taking somebody 18 years old that has never stepped a foot in college, and you're teaching them to speak Russian. And the training is a couple of years, and it's very intense, and it takes a while, but you're training them to speak Russian, Korean, Vietnamese, Chinese, etc. So you're teaching them to speak all of these languages. Why? Because you need to be able to speak all of these languages, and we need people to sit in these places that can speak all of these languages.
Those are real facts about that whole training and bringing young people along. I'm just going to interject this. This episode is not about me; it's about y'all. Just taking young people out of negative environments too. Teaching them a skill, as you mentioned, so that at whatever point they separate from the armed forces, that they have a skill that they can use to, be successful in life, to manage life. And so I couldn't agree with you more that it is an opportunity for young people to learn some things that they certainly may not learn outside of the armed forces environment. Because you're right, $1 million equipment, multi-million dollar equipment,
Multi-million dollar.
that you learn how to navigate, and become proficient at and train others too. So that's pretty cool. So with that said, let me just ask you all this. Like, you talked about the timing of when you all were in the Air Force, right? That 20-year gap. But being a 20-year gap, what was similar and what would you say was most similar? What was most different about that gap and serving both in the Air Force?
Alexis, what do you think the difference was from watching me serve and then from when you served?
It's a very good question. I don't know because I don't know much of your experience and how to relate it to mine, but I will say this just something that I've seen over my 20 some odd years. And you can tell me, Mom, if this is something that you saw. That PT test sure did change a lot. It changes every few years.
Yes. That's a good one. That was a good one.
And the uniforms, they change pretty frequently these days.
So I would agree. So that was a good one. The PT test and the uniforms have definitely changed. When I enlisted in 1985, in August of 1985, we were wearing fatigues, just plain old green fatigues. And, side note, I was kind of cute in them because I had mine tailored and they didn't really like the fact that I tailored them. They said, they're not supposed to. I said, hey, it fits, they fit. Other ones didn't fit well. So I had mine tailored. Anyway, yes, there we are. So that was when the uniform was very similar. Oh, I'm a little juicier than you there, Alexis. Okay, good. That was right around
This
retirement time.
was about 21 years ago.
And it was around retirement time. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but we wore fatigues and then we migrated to, I don't know, migrate is the right word, but anyway, we changed to fatigues. We went from fatigues to the battle dress uniform, which we call BDUs. We went to BDUs and now the BDUs are even a different color. They're an odd, like multicolored color. So it just looks different. The other thing that has changed is the regulation or the Air Force instruction about the length of hair, how much hair you can have. We couldn't have it. It couldn't go past our collar when we were in. As far as a woman, you could have a ponytail. You can, wrap it up in a ponytail. It had to be in a bun, but it couldn't be more like men couldn't have more than a 1/4 inch in length of their height of their hair. Women couldn't have more than 3 inches in bulk. And now I see people with ponytails hanging down their backs. I rode through the gate one time and this girl said, okay, Master Sergeant, welcome. She turned her head and I saw this swinging ponytail that was hanging down her back. I said, hey, excuse me, pardon me, just a question. Has anybody said anything at all about the length of your hair? Oh no, our hair can be down there. I was like, ouch. So,
Yeah.
not that my hair was way down ponytail length, but goodness gracious, it would have been nice to know. See, I was rocking my Jerry curl back in the day. And it was long, but I had to pin it up and it didn't have the same cute effect when you pinned up the Jerry curl. It needed to kind of flow in. And
Right.
it wasn't dripping. It was juicy, but it wasn't dripping.
Right.
So, so that's the kind of stuff that I know for sure has changed. Like Alexis brought that up, the uniforms, the instructions for how we could wear our hair. And there was a time when black women couldn't wear cornrows. We couldn't wear braids. But when I was in, it started getting to the point where, we kind of gave pushback. What do you mean? It's too ethnic. Well, what does that have to do with anything? It's braids, it's clean. So clean, dry, and serviceable is what we're supposed to be. If your hair is clean or you are clean, dry, and serviceable, that's what your hair is supposed to be. So they stopped that because they allowed us to wear braids and have cornrows. You couldn't be doing all of the stuff that's being done now with the baby hair all the way down by your eyebrows and all of that. You can't. I still don't think you can do that. However, those were the kinds of things. And the PT test, like Alexa said, it went from us running and doing push-ups and sit-ups to a bike test. We were on a bicycle. We were riding a bicycle. Ergonomics. Wasn't it ergonomic bike test or whatever? So we had to ride the bike test and keep up the pace on the bike test from being out on the track running. So those kinds of things are the ones that I know have changed. I know there probably have been some inner workings of more specific things, like kind of the way the jobs turn the things that they do into specific jobs. But those are the things that are very specific. So that was a good one, Lexus. I like that.
I do have another one, a little more, I guess, mission oriented. Now, one of my jobs as a civilian was to be an instructor of financial management. Financial management is my career field, but I had the opportunity as a civilian to go back and teach the military, the new airmen coming through what we call technical training school. But one of the reasons why I left instructing, this is just one of the changes. We went from teaching finance in finance tech school to teaching Excel, PowerPoint basics, and how to properly, professionally write an email. And then we did some customer service basics, and then we also taught them basic budget and accounting principles. But we used to have an in-depth tech school of the career field. And even before I came in, the tech school was broken down into two different sections. So you either went into budget or you in accounting, or you went into the service side. And then by the time I came along, they combined it. So that's just kind of something mission oriented. The training changes throughout the years. And it's funny now that I've left instructing, they're bringing finance back to the school because the airmen are getting out to their first duty stations and having no idea how to do their job.
Oof. Nice.
You talk about PT. The one thing I remember about PT is I got good at it really fast because in basic training, our drill sergeants, they tied that whole successful PT stuff to food. They had a chin-up bar in front of the mess hall. And if you couldn't do the required number of chin-ups, you was going to the end of the line. And you guys know how hard you work in that training and that PT. And if you can't eat in the required time that they give you, you are just like wore out, dog tired, tongue hanging out by the time the next meal came. So I made my mission that I was not going to miss a meal. And thus, I had to be good at PT.
Well, so, sir, that's the difference between the Army and the Air Force, because we did not have a chin-up bar over there by the dining facility, what they call a chow hall. We did not, which is why another reason why I wasn't going in the Army, because I needed to make sure I could eat. My little narrow behind needed to eat.
So I got a slightly different story. When I was in basic training, we had this thing called Warrior Challenge. And part of that was we get to participate in different activities. And I got to be on the tug of war team. And you know what that meant? You get to eat more food and have more time. Because as you all know, when you go through the chow line, there's tables in a row. And by the time the next table comes to sit down, you better be getting up and putting your tray away. So you did not have a lot of time to eat. And you had to drink a glass of water before you touched any food. So to be able to eat more food and have longer time, I was right there with the tug of war team.
All right, let's transition into something else here. So, you both talked about moments of change during your time in the Air Force, and mid-career shifts and so forth, mindset change as well. So let's lean into some of that. Bettina, you mentioned changing in mindset. What triggered your mindset when you first went into the Air Force?
So my initial reason for going in the Air Force was a little similar to Alexis. I didn't want to go to college. I wasn't interested in going to college. I was the last of 6 children. I am the last of 6 children from a single mother household, single parent household. And I knew that my mother, couldn't afford to send me to college for even whatever financial aid didn't pay. I knew she didn't have the overflow. And I knew that I felt that it was going to be a need to help take care of my mom, because my mom was at that point, she had a lot of physical ailments. She could still walk around, but she had arthritis really badly, and she wasn't able to continue to do her profession, which she was a licensed barber. And so I knew that it was going to be up to me to try to help take care of her. So strangely enough, in the 8th grade, my brother, Mark, was he was in ROTC in high school. I was in middle school. He was in high school, ROTC, really quick, funny story. and he was on the drill team, and he was the drill team commander. And he was very smooth and debonair and suave, and he walked through while they were spinning the weapons and twirling the weapons, and he had on that helmet, that silver helmet. He's walking through, and they're tossing weapons back and forth. And I said, I am going to, in the 8th grade, I said, I'm going in the Air Force. I said, I'm going in ROTC when I get in high school. I'm going to be on the drill team. I'm going to be the drill team commander. I'm going to enlist in the Air Force, make my mother my dependent, hire a car, and retire at 20 years. I got in the 9th grade, went to high school, got on the drill team, was in training. The second day, we were learning to spin the weapon, and the butt of that weapon cracked me across that side of that head real good, and I saw some colors. I saw a lot of different colors. The bombs bursting in air, and I realized that it was not going to be me doing drill team. So I pivoted. I pivoted, right? I left drill team, stayed in ROTC, and enlisted in the Air Force. And my primary goal was really to help take care of my mom when I enlisted in the Air Force. It wasn't about patriotism. It wasn't about the red, white, and blue, the Star Spangled Banner. It wasn't about any of that. It was about taking care of my mom. So in my very first year and a half, I enlisted in August 2020, 1985. In 1986, my mom became my legal dependent. And she was my legal dependent my entire Air Force career and for about 4 years after I retired, which meant she was able to get all of her medical taken care of. I was sending her money every month to make sure that she was able to live, because she wasn't able at that time to take care of herself financially until she was able to get disability. And I bought, the first car that I bought was a 1982 Buick Skylark tan, and I bought it. And in Montana, it is freezing cold. It actually snowed in May. So it was really cold. And we used to have block heaters in the cars. They had block heaters, so you had to plug them up. So I thought, when I drove the car by myself all the way from Great Falls, Montana to Newport News, Virginia to give my mother this car, I thought she had to plug it up. So I had her running an extension cord at the townhouse we lived in from the parking space all the way through, and a little crack in the window. When we was plugging up the car, my grandfather said, she didn't have to plug that car up. It's not that cold here. I was like, well, what do you know? Never mind all of the bicycles that rode across it while on the sidewalk and all of that. So, but there was a, and that's just, like lack of knowledge, kind of a funny thing. Like, you don't know that it's not freezing cold, so you don't have to put it on a block heater. But anyway, so I did that. I enlisted. I made my mom my dependent. I purchased her a car. My next great thing was, I need to do 20 years and retire. And I did exactly that. In between, me serving is when the idea of patriotism came in for me. I am a big part of serving this country and protecting and serving, especially with the job that I had as a security police and a Minuteman II. I was securing the Minuteman II missiles to make sure that there weren't people going out trying to, and they called them hippies. They might still call them hippies, but they just believe make love, not war. They would try to go out on the sites and, dance around, and you all shouldn't be doing this. And so we had to go and shoo them away and, whatever, I'll call the local police and have them arrested. However, that's when I realized, like, this is a big deal. If I'm not doing my job, I'm not protecting this country. Everybody has a job. So people that do administrative jobs and people that work in the hospitals and the people that cook in the dining facilities and that work and build if you're not cooking, I'm not eating. So, and if I'm not protecting this, we're running the risk of something being, blown up. And if you're not doing the admin work or the accounting to make sure that I get paid, so it is, everybody has a spoke in this wheel. And that's when I understood that it was bigger than just, I'm serving, I'm taking care of my mom, she's my dependent. That's when I realized I play a big part in the security of this country. Even my small little space and my small little self, I played a part, and me doing my job was important. It mattered.
Alexis, I know you went in 20 years later, but when you go into the armed forces, you have a certain comfort. You have certain comfort zone that you're living in, and then when you go into the Air Force, in your case, the Air Force, you see how different things really are. So, how did you handle dealing with your comfort zone and being, I'm going to say forced out of your comfort zone because I'm sure the Air Force did that for you.
Mhm.
How did you handle that? What did that look like for you?
Well, I'll say for one, I never doubted that I could or could not, I never doubted that I couldn't hack it in the military or in the Air Force, so to speak. However, I know for me, I was very, and I still am, very introverted, very quiet. Um, and so I guess that could have been a challenge for me. And in a sense, it was. But one of the things that the Air Force taught me, so to speak, is to overcome my challenges. So the very first thing that I was thrown into was being what they call a dorm chief in basic training. And the dorm chief is pretty much second in command to the drill instructor. And so I was responsible for 30 something women at the age of 18, and several of them were older than me. And of course, some people don't take kindly to that, some little kid telling them what to do. And then, of course, I'm very soft spoken. So some people, of course, didn't take me seriously. Um, but that was a big responsibility for me. And that really drew me out of my comfort zone to try to lead a flight of all women. I was responsible when somebody got in trouble because, hey, you're the leader. You gotta cover they call it CYA.
Understood.
Cover your assets.
Right,
Assets.
right.
And I'm guessing they still call it that.
Yes, they
They
do.
do. Yes. And so that was where I was first pushed out of my comfort zone. And there was a time in basic training where I got sick and I had to go to what they call med hold. And I was almost there long enough to get what they call washed back, and which means you'd have to move into another flight and your graduation date would be pushed back. But thankfully, I was able to rejoin my flight, and somebody did something crazy, and I wasn't even there, and I still got in trouble for it. And at this time, I was just like, I'm done with this. I don't want to be the dorm chief anymore. But thankfully, I had good leadership that saw something in me, and they pushed me to continue with it. And I graduated, and everything was good. We got honor flight, we got all kind of accolades. So that was of course, a boost in my ego or letting me know that I really can do things that are hard. Another thing that the Air Force taught me to do is become a better public speaker. I'm a little out of practice now, but I did have to give many trainings and give briefings. And so my public speaking ultimately got better, and I wasn't so shy about it or so nervous about speaking in front of people. And even now in my current job, I'm always volunteering to do something because it still pushes me outside of my comfort zone. I'm not going to say I don't get nervous ever, but it's just something that I continue to strive to do things that are hard. One more thing, I don't think I talked about it. I know I said in the beginning that I had no intentions of ever going to college, that just education, I did what I needed to do in high school, and that was just going to be the end of it. But my friends were going to college and they made it look cool. So I did it. I followed the crowd. And I did graduate with my bachelor's degree. Yeah, like I said, they made it look cool. But one thing I did to push out of my comfort zone is I went to school for accounting, and my current job is an accountant. And let me tell you, my mom can attest to it. To this day, I am not good at math. I probably shouldn't admit this, but even some simple equations, I have to think about it in my head, carry the one. Okay. But because I was not good at math, I had to overcome that. I got an accounting degree. And I didn't graduate with honors like some people, but I still did very well. I was on the dean's list a couple times, and I'm doing well for myself uh, through pushing through the uncomfortable things.
Sounds like you made some pretty big shifts there.
I did.
So, Bettina, you're kind of this calm, cucumber. I mean, I'm looking at you. You just you keeping everything wrapped up, right? So how did that, being calm, or how did that calmness benefit you, right? How did it? What role did it play in how you led or responded to pressure when you were
when you were in the Air Force?
I would love to stay on that line and have people believe that I am the calm one. That is so not true. I promise you, there's at least a couple, 2, 3 times that I probably could have been kicked out of the Air Force for my mouth, for beating up my roommate. It was. Now, I can't lie. I promise you, and I'm not proud of it. Okay. She called me out of my name. It didn't go well. The next thing I knew, her hair was wrapped in one fist and the other one was going to work on the face that was in front of me. I'm not proud of that. Okay. However, I had a really great first sergeant and I was a security police at the time, and everybody in the dormitory was a security police, and she was not a security police. She happened to be living there because of something she had done, and they were trying to keep her safe or whatever, and they thought putting her in with the security police was going to keep her safe, but they didn't know that the security police they put her with, the only female security police in the dorm, was not having it. So anyway, I will tell you that because I had people around me, supervisors and commanders and first sergeants, that looked out for me, and they saw something in me that I didn't necessarily even see in myself. Because if I'm being honest, when I first went in, my only goal was I don't want to go back to Newport News, Virginia, because I have to keep taking care of my mom. That was my goal. And so after a few incidents and realizing, whoa, that could have went really, really bad. That could have been a bad situation. And me realizing that and then saying, okay, it wasn't that I didn't want to follow the rules. It was just that I was a bit of a hothead. I came from a single parent household. I was the last of 6 children. I always felt like I had to speak the loudest to be heard. And my neck was a steady constant. Oh no, you didn't. And it was, it didn't matter who it was. Somebody could be talking to me, a commander or somebody. And if I didn't, everything was told on my face. My face told all the stories. It said what my mouth did not say. It often still does. However, one of my big, and I'm going to shift really quickly. So, but the calm came later. In answer to your question, the calm came later. One of my greatest senses of pride was when Alexis went in the Air Force. I told her, you don't have my story. My story is I need to take care of my mother. You don't have that story. You don't need to go in the Air Force and make me your dependent and take care of me. I don't want you to feel like you have to do that. Your story is different. I want you to go in, be yourself, do what you could do. And I was, and the other thing is she had a totally different story, because when I enlisted, there was nobody that could afford to come to Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas, to come to my graduation. I was there by myself. People had family and friends that came to the graduation. It was a blessing that my mother had a friend whose husband used to be in the military, and they were stationed in San Antonio. They lived there. So when we on graduation day, she came and picked me up, and she took me to her house, and I had dinner with them. I didn't have family come. When Alexis graduated, I was so pleasantly surprised to see her. And she talked about stepping out of her comfort zone and being quiet and more introverted and soft-spoken. When I saw her walking and leading that pack, I was like, what in the absolute world is going on here? I mean, and she was marching, and she was very she knew what she was doing. She was confident, and I just teared up when I watched her. She probably doesn't even know that, but I just watched her and I teared up, and I'm like, this is the same child that spoke, and she made herself small all the time. No, I'm sorry, I didn't. She made herself small, but she was leading all of these women behind her, and she had her head held up, and she was marching, and they were following her. And I said, oh my goodness, this is a different person. And that's when she learned to start kind of telling me. She grew a little better with it, because I have a very dominant personality. I know that about me. And as, rearing a child, a girl, my first thing was, I need to get you out of high school. I need you to not be pregnant, not use drugs, and not have any law violations. Whew. Okay. And once I get all of that done and woo-wee, now you can roll. However, I realized that she had way more in her than I even knew. I knew she had more in her than what she was putting out, but I realized that the way that they built her into a leader, they didn't just create her because she had it in her. She didn't know she had it. I didn't know she had it to that degree. The way they built her into a leader and the confidence they instilled, raising her self-esteem, it was incredible to just watch in real time. It was incredible to watch in real time. So I needed to kind of be wrangled and she needed to be let go. So, and so it was like, yin and yang, if that makes any sense, or yin and yang. Yeah, I think. Okay.
Now, you might be wondering why you're hearing me right now. The conversation with Bettina and Alexis has been truly magical, and it only gets better. Due to the length of the session, we decided to break it into 2 episodes. So join us next week for part 2 as we continue our conversation with Bettina and Alexis and continue our celebration of Veterans Day. See you next week. Thanks for joining us on this episode of the PSI Effect Podcast. This show doesn't happen without you, and you can connect with us via Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts. Visit our website at thisispsipod.com and find us on YouTube and social media at This Is PSI Pod. That's at This Is PSI Pod. Until next time, remember, be brave and rise on purpose.